Hashem's loving grace, welcome to our lesson, The Fallen Leaf. The Fallen Leaf, it's named after a story that the Baal Shem Tov told, and we'll tell it tonight. Okay, the holy Baal Shem Tov, he has his students that can't begin to explain the spiritual level of his students. The spiritual level of students, they were, there's not a person alive that was on the level of the Baal Shem Tov students today. And they couldn't understand the depth of the concept of divine providence. So despite their magnificent minds and their comprehensive Torah learning backgrounds and their really lofty souls, they just couldn't comprehend how the Almighty personally supervises and determines every detail of creation, from macro to micro. We're talking about the Almighty and the galaxies and the super galaxies. And in the Baal Shem Tov's time, they knew about the galaxies, Milky Way galaxies, but they didn't have so much of an idea like we do today about the super galaxies, and there's no such thing as the big black void beyond. Just keep going. NASA with its stronger and stronger and stronger optical equipment, just more galaxies and more galaxies and more galaxies and more galaxies. And we see all this magnificent universe. The Zohar tells us it's like nothing. It's like an onion peel for the Almighty. Can't believe there's all these macro fantastic worlds, and then we go the opposite way into micro. And we go all the way down, split down to a cell and a nucleus of a cell and the DNA and the RNA and the individual atoms. Every single atom in a chain of molecules, it's personal Hashem being governed by Hashem. How can this possibly be? So they couldn't understand that. Even from basic situation, when we ponder it, we ponder the extent, the magnificent, infinite macro side of the Almighty. And then we go the other way, and the infinite micro side. Even all the time, scientists are discovering more micro and more micro and more micro. They didn't know how old it was, the discovery of DNA and RNA. It's not that old. And stuff, we have genes, genes, but then number of chromosomes and a gene and number of DNA chains on a chromosome. It's mind-boggling. And this is all the Almighty personally said. Almighty intervening in every DNA in a human being, because if there's change of one tiny little chromosome, it's going to determine whether a person has a 140 IQ or a 70 IQ or brown hair or blue hair or white skin or yellow skin or black skin or whatever. One tiny little thing, just the Almighty personally determining every single one. So students just couldn't understand it. Couldn't understand, too mind-boggling. So the Baal Shem Tov, he decided to take them to his favorite classroom. This is what old Isaac did. Old Isaac's classroom was out in the mountains, out in the hills. And where old Isaac, a lot of old Isaac was the Baal Shem Tov, was built after the Baal Shem Tov. Because the Baal Shem Tov is the Melitzer Rebbeimite spiritual guide in this world. He says that everyone must have a spiritual guide in this world and the next world. Okay, so my spiritual guide in this world is a Melitzer Rebbe. My spiritual guide in the next world is the Baal Shem Tov. And that's why I'm so delighted to be able to teach the Baal Shem Tov's teachings, because there's really no one compendium of the Baal Shem Tov's teachings. You'll find them spread out. You'll find them in Tanya of Shneur Zalman Aladi, that he was a student of the Maggid of Mezrich, who was the number one student of Baal Shem Tov. You'll find them in Toldus Yaakov Yosef, that he was one of the prime students of the Baal Shem Tov. You find them spread out, bits and pieces spread out. And so what we're doing, preparing these lessons, is taking all the teachings about divine providence and bring them under one roof. And hopefully, with Hashem's help, that after we finish this, we're going to have one little clear and concise book about divine providence. Okay, so the Baal Shem Tov took them to favorite classroom. Baal Shem Tov's favorite classroom was out in the open, out in Hashem's universe. Okay, so he took them to the woods in central Ukraine, near Mezebos, the town where he lived, and he wanted to show them how Hashem intervenes in every single detail of creation. And the Baal Shem Tov promised them that, they'd see it. So one of the disciples says, Master, he says to Baal Shem Tov, the teacher, says, esteemed teacher, I fully understand how the sun can't shine without divine decree. And I understand that Hashem creates each one of the stars. I understand that Hashem creates each one of us. I also realize, that's the Baal Shem, they understood on their level back then genes and chromosomes. They understand that Hashem decides whether we're going to be tall or short, or whether they're going to have wide shoulders or narrow shoulders, or what type of build we are, and what type of color hair and what color eyes. Yes. But they just couldn't understand how Hashem personally oversees every insignificant occurrence and every creation. The Baal Shem Tov told there's nothing that can happen in creation without Hashem personally determining. That's divine providence. Divine providence is not only Hashem's supervision, it's Hashem personal determination. It's Hashem deciding. Hashem is actively participating in everything of our life. If you put on a blood pressure machine, test your blood pressure now, and diastolic and systolic the pressure, and you see that your blood pressure is 120 over 80 or 121 over 181, that is Hashem deciding whether your blood pressures go up from 120 to 121, and the diastolic and the systolic from 80 to 81. That's Hashem personally deciding. What you had for dinner tonight, Hashem is personally deciding what's going to become part of your muscle, what is going to give you energy, and what is going to go out the other end as refuse. That's Hashem personally deciding. It's no one else. It's not automatic pilot. Hashem did not create the world and go into automatic pilot. Students could understand this. They could not understand this. This is Emuna. So the Baal Shem Tov said, there is no such thing as an insignificant creation. No such thing. And no such thing as an insignificant occurrence. Okay. So if Rebbetzin Hendy Gross decides that she's going to make chicken soup for the family or noodle soup for the family, that's Hashem personally. He put that idea in her mind. Okay, make the chicken soup. It's better to have the chicken soup and not the noodle soup. The noodle soup save for another time. Okay, and if David decided that he would buy a black car instead of a yellow car, and that there would be one available to dealers, that is Hashem putting it in David's mind. That's Hashem putting it in the dealer's mind. And that's Hashem putting it in the previous customer. The previous customer would buy the blue car and leave the black car for David because he'd send David to the same dealership. The puzzle in each one, every occurrence in every one of our lives, from the smallest to the biggest. And this was Baal Shem Tov is explaining to his students. They can't understand it. Can't understand it. So Baal Shem Tov says everything happens, no big or small. It's personal from the Almighty, and it's divine providence. It all has meaning, and it all is important in the scheme of creation. Now, maybe Kelly doesn't think whether she ate a sweet potato or a baked white potato for dinner, that makes any difference. It sure does make a difference. It sure does. It makes a big difference. Which farmer would sell the potato? Because the one Farmer Jones sells the sweet potatoes and Farmer Smith sells the white potatoes. And so Hashem determined that Farmer Smith should have another halfpenny of income. So he's put in Kelly's mind in the supermarket in London that she should buy the sweet potato and not the baked potato, so that Farmer Smith would get the halfpenny and not the smart Farmer Jones. It's unbelievable. It's unbelievable. The same goes everywhere in the world. Everywhere in the world. And Fumani, when he makes a decision in business in South Africa, and that's Hashem's right there in South Africa. Like he's with Julia in London, and like he's with Rebbe Berkowitz in Jerusalem, and he's like with Eliza Wender in Houston. He's like, Hashem is everywhere, deciding every tiny little thing. And Baal Shem Tov told his students, he's right here with us in the forest, and told them that they still couldn't understand. They can't understand. And we're talking about magnificent, brilliant students that knew entire tractates of Gemara by heart, that knew Kabbalah by heart, that knew the things that we have difficulty grasping, and they were so good. Well, it was a cloudy day in late October, out in the forest in Ukraine. It was cloudy, and at middle of October, and all the trees in Ukraine, it's already cold, and they've turned color. The trees are bright orange or bright red, depending on the tree. They're mostly oak and poplar trees out in the forest. And a strong wind blew from the north, from the Arctic. And all of a sudden, a wave of leaves started blowing in the wind. So the Baal Shem Tov says to his students, he says, you probably don't see the significance of a dry leaf falling off a tree. So, what do you care? You go out in the autumn and you see these wind blow and the leaves up in the air. What do you care? What's it mean? They're going to fall. They're going to become compost. What's going to happen to them? A tree's going to go over them. He says, you don't see the significance? The students shrug their shoulders. And they say, Rebbe, this is significant? He said, it sure is. It sure is. You've got to believe it's significant. Because if the Almighty decreed that that particular leaf should fall off the tree at this time, it sure is significant. They say, Rebbe, what could be more meaningless? The Baal Shem Tov told the students, you think it's meaningless? Pick a leaf, any leaf. Here are thousands of leaves in the forest falling off the trees. Pick a leaf and follow that leaf. See what happens to that leaf. So the students picked an oak tree, and out of that oak tree, they said that leaf, and the wind came, and the wind blew that particular leaf off the tree, and they saw this bright orange yellow leaf fly high in the air, then it made an arc, and the wind subsided, came down, and when it hit the ground, the wind blew more, and it was rolling, somersaulting on the ground, and they followed the leaf into the meadow. It left the woods, outside the woods, down in the meadow, and all of a sudden, the wind stopped, and the sun came out. And the sun came out, and the sun was really hot. It was a cloudy day, but now it's sunny, it's hot. Where did the leaf fall? When it was cloudy, the ants and the worms, they're invertebrates. An invertebrate cannot last long in hot sun because invertebrate is a creature that doesn't have a backbone. And a creature that doesn't have a backbone, like a worm or like an ant, it dries out in the hot sun. The ants only come out in the shade. They won't come, they shy away from the sun. Same thing with the worms. An earthworm won't come out in full sun. So as the clouds dispersed, all of a sudden the sun came out, there was this distressed worm, and the ground was dry. By the time he would bury himself back into the ground, he'd dehydrate. So the leaf, the wind stopped, the leaf landed right on the back of the worm, and the leaf shaded the little worm under it. Students were believed. Baal Shem Tov says, you see, what's that? Hashem sent a wind from up in heaven, and Hashem sent that particular oak tree to shed its leaves, and this one leaf to blow out of the forest into the meadow, and to stop exactly when the sun would come out on the back of this worm to save the life of the worm. And Hashem showed about the students. He says, that is the Almighty personally intervening to save the life of the worm, because the worm's term on earth is not yet finished. The worm has more work to do. The worm is going to aerate the soil. It's going to do, maybe the worm's got to help the next year's crop come up. The worm's got work to do. The worm has his continued contribution to creation. And as soon as the worm completes his designated term of service and his soul correction, he's finished. But it wasn't finished now. So the Baal Shem Tov made this entire wind come from the Arctic to the Ukraine to blow an oak tree, to knock off a particular leaf, to blow out of the forest, to go into the meadow, to come on the back of an earthworm, to save it from the sun that would come out and dehydrate it. Well, smiling at his students now, the Baal Shem Tov says, do you begin to comprehend the depth of divine providence? If the Almighty takes such care of a worm, what does he do with each one of you? At a much higher level. We have the Arizal, the Holy Arizal, Rabbi Yitzchak Luri Ashkenazi, the father of Kabbalah, codified the Kabbalah. He tells us there are 4 levels of creation. The lowest level of creation is the mineral level of creation, the rocks and the sand. And then there's the plant level of creation, the vegetative level of creation. That has a little higher. So by the way, every rock and every grain of sand has a basic soul. Without a basic soul, it can't exist because it's got a spiritual entity. The Almighty gets every single physical entity its spiritual side. A rock has a soul. A plant has a little higher soul. And I'll prove to you that a plant has a soul. It's very easy. You don't have to take my word for it. Look at the research done in Japan by Japanese botanists. They took 2 cloned African violets from the same mother plant. They raised them the same way. You've got the same exact plant. They're twins from the same mother plant. Put them in the same flower pot, in the same exact window, the same exact exposure to sun, gave them the same amount of water and nutrients. But what they did to one plant, they said, here, beloved plant, here's your water, enjoy, grow well. And the other plant, they didn't give love. They said, here, take it. Take your water. The other plant withered, and the first plant flowered. You could see, you prove that the vegetative has a soul. They did the same thing. The same Japanese researchers did the same thing with water. Water has a soul. What they did, they took a glass of water, and at the first glass of water, they said loving things, romantic things to the glass of water. Oh, glass of water, you can restore a person, you keep from dehydrating, you keep lively, to keep him alive. They said nasty things to the second glass of water. Oh, you probably fall and you break the glass, you spill on the floor, you do what? And then they froze the water. They made ice cubes out of it. The glass of water that they spoke nicely to had beautiful, uniform, symmetric crystals. And the glass of water that they spoke not nice to had these jagged crystals. You can see this on your cell phone for the internet. This is not the people that are not even teaching Torah, but you can see even science can back up everything we're teaching about divine providence, about the fact that every creature, every creation has a soul. So we go from the mineral level to the vegetative level, then we go to the animal level. Animals have a higher soul. And then we go to the human level, which has the highest form of soul. So when the students of the Baal Shem Tov saw the extent of the miracles and the personal intervention that the Creator did to keep that worm alive, their jaws dropped. They were in awe. They didn't know what to say. Okay, so such precision, supervision, down to the exact tiny detail on the most seemingly insignificant creation, a worm. What's more, each tiny creation influenced magnificent creations and events. Take that worm that aerates the soul, the soil, Freudian slip. Okay, the soil, it's got its soul too. But to grow to something to grow better, maybe something that grows better, and out of the nourishment of the plant that grows because of the worm nourishing that a person, a medical researcher is going to eat that plant that grew from the soil that the worm aerated. And he's going to get this nourishment to his brain. He's going to find a discovery to cancer. Okay, so the cure to cancer began with this worm aerating the soil. Once again, did that second time? Okay, thank you, Hashem. So this is the extent of Hashem's personal intervention in creation, what we call divine providence. Once again, hashgacha pratit, that people are blind to. And this brings us to a higher level of Emuna, because as we will learn in our subsequent lessons, when we realize this and realize that everything is happening from Hashem and it's chess pieces on the board or magnificent pieces of a 10,000, 100,000 million piece puzzle, and it's all Hashem putting in place. And if we don't have all the pieces of puzzle, we can't see the picture, and we lack most of the pieces of the puzzle. We have very few pieces of the puzzle. And once we have this knowledge of divine providence, we're happy. Everything we flow with the biggest difficulties in life. Sure, we still have pain in life, but the pain is understandable. And the pain, we can accept the pain because we think the pain is part, the person can't be in pleasure all the time, just like the lungs can't all the time be in expansion, they're in contraction. And the same thing, after pain and pleasure, there's no pleasure without pain. We know this, and there's no up without down. That's Newton. For every action has an equal and opposite reaction. The same thing emotionally, same thing spiritually. So Hashem won't let the sun shine or won't let the wind blow without taking into consideration how it affects every tiny creation, even a little earthworm in central Ukraine. And only then did the Baal Shem Tov's students realize the extent of creation. Now, these were the Baal Shem Tov students. I'm going to take you another 3 or 4 generations down in Hasidic world, Hasidic teachings. The Baal Shem Tov died in 1728. The Baal Shem Tov, his major disciple, who continued on, he became the Rebbe, the spiritual master after the Baal Shem Tov, was Rabbi Dov Ber of Mezrich. We call him the Maggid, M-A-G-G-I-D. Rabbi Dov Ber, the Maggid of Mezrich. Okay, the Maggid is like the orator, the speaker, but it really means a seer. He could see far in. He could speak into the future. This was a tremendous, tremendous spiritual level. From the Maggid of Mezrich comes all the great Hasidic masters, Rabbi Noam Elimelech, Rabbi Elimelech of Lizensk, Rabbi Aaron of Karlin, Rabbi Shlomo of Karlin, Rabbi Zusha, Rabbi Elimelech's brother, the Balatanya, Rabbi Shneir Zalian of Ladi. The whole Chabad movement comes from, they were students of their first Rebbe was students of the Maggid Mezrich. I could go on and on and on. Okay, so one of the Maggid students was Rabbi Shlomo of Karlin, called Rabbi Shlomo Karliner. Rabbi Shlomo had a student named Reb Uri of Strelisk. Okay, Reb Uri of Strelisk, he especially, generation after generation, he internalized and adopted the teachings of Baal Shem Tov and Emuna. They called him the Sraf. The Sraf is a burning angel. Like the Kabbalah, the angels are fire. They're fire like electricity. You can imagine a spark of electricity. That's an angel because it goes with the speed of a spark of electricity. Okay, they call him the Sraf, the Seraph, the Sraf of Strelix, Rabbi Uri. His Emuna was so like a fire. If it was somebody was not on a holy level, he would get burned by him. It was a danger to be by him. And Rabbi Uri, he would pray with such fervor and he'd serve Hashem with fervor. Emuna, he was the address for Emuna in that generation. Okay, so despite the fact that all the Baal Shem Tov's students were prodigiously pious and righteous and learned, Rabbi Dov Ber Mezrich became his continuation. He carried on the baton. And then from him went to another Rebbe's. We're going particularly down through the Karliner line and to Rebbe Uri of Strelisk. Okay, so there was a Rebbe that had two prime students, another Rebbe. And it proved the Rebbe, one of these two prime students, they were very intelligent in their learning and they're very pious in their praying. But the Rebbe saw that they lacked a little bit in Emuna. They didn't have that depth of Emuna that the Baal Shem Tov taught. So he knew that for them to make higher spiritual growth, they'd have to learn Emuna. So he says, I suggest you go to Reb Uri of Strelisk and, okay, you've learned from me what I could give you. Now you have to go to Reb Uri. This particular Rebbe was a humble Rebbe, and he suggested that they go further. They go somewhere on a higher level. Okay, so the two Hasidim, again, these guys are no pushovers. These were students of one of the generation spiritual greats. They want to be going a higher level, so they go to the town of Strelisk to Reb Uri, who's known as the Sraf, the burning angel of Strelisk, and they say to him, they go in the Rebbe's home, and they say, Rebbe, we want to connect ourselves to you, and we want you to illuminate the path of divine service for us. We want to go higher in divine service. So Rebbe Uri asked them, he says, do you believe in Hashem? I said, what do you mean insulted? Here are these guys, they learned all of Gemara, they learned all of Kabbalah. When the Rebbe's asking, of course we believe in Hashem, of course we believe in the Almighty. Without hesitation, he answered him. So then the Rebbe asked him another question. He said, do you believe with complete belief in divine providence, in Hashgacha Pratis, and the Creator's providence over all of creation, no exception? And they said right away, of course, Rebbe, of course we believe that Hashem, that's the first principle of Rambam, that Hashem does and will do. Okay, of course. So then the holy Sraf, Rebbe Uri Strelisker, he got up from his chair and he went over to an adjacent window and he looked out the window. Now the window of his home faced the main street in the shtetl, in the little township. And he saw a wagon going by, a horse-drawn wagon. And he was a peasant on that wagon, and he had a big wagon full of straw. Like the Ukrainian peasants, it's kind of wagon full of straw. And this peasant goes by, there's a wagon full of straw. And the Rebbe calls the two Hasidim over by the window. And he says to them, look out the window, look at the window. And he say, do you see that wagon there with the peasant full of straw? And they said, yes, Rebbe, together like it chiming like schoolboys. And Rebbe said further. I think the Rebbe is teaching, he's a first grade teacher, a second grade teacher. And here are these two big Torah scholars. The Rebbe's talking like they're second graders. And the Rebbe says, do you believe that Hashem personally, the Almighty himself, nobody else, decides the position of each stalk of straw. I don't know how you say it in British English, a blade of straw or stalk of straw. A difference whether you look at an American dictionary or a British dictionary, but let's say stalk of straw, blade. I'll use them at their fourth. They go back and forth. Okay. It's Israeli Mino English. We go back and forth. Okay. Do you believe that every stalk, every little blade of straw, every little piece of straw, it's Hashem deciding where it is going to be in that pile and which pile of straw is going to be on top of it and which piece of straw is going to be below it? The Rebbe was making their heads spin. Wait, they never address this. What is the Rebbe playing with us? Trivia questions? And then the Rebbe says to them, he doesn't let up. He says, do you have complete emuna? Not believe. You have complete emuna that Hashem decides exactly how many blades of straw are going to be on that wagon? Not one more, not one less. What's the difference between thousands and tens of thousands and 100,000 blades of straw? What's the difference if there's 100,000 blades of straw or 101,000? They couldn't understand. The Rebbe doesn't let up. So now another wind blew. Hashem sent the wind, like he did for the Baal Shem Tov. Okay, the wind blew, and a few pieces of straw flew up in the air, the few pieces of straw that were on top, that weren't packed down in the pile, and they started blowing off the wagon. You know, the top pieces of straw. You've probably seen this in a truck sometimes, carrying something. You see the dust fly off the truck. This is what happened with the wagon of straw. So the Rebbe says to the two disciples, he says, do you see those pieces of straw blowing off the wagon? He didn't wait for an answer for them. They didn't. What's the Rebbe want from us? What are we talking about? Straw and wagon and pieces and this and how many pieces of straw? And they're crazy. What's our Rebbe sent us here for? This is to go to second grade, to learn all this inconsequential stuff? What does that have to do with the service of Hashem? They couldn't understand. So the Rebbe, he understood their thought. They're thinking, they're big intelligence. Yeah, they're professors of Torah. Okay, Mr. Professor. The Rebbe nailed him right between the eyes. The Rebbe said, do you believe right now it's the Creator deciding which pieces of straw are going to blow off the wagon and which pieces of straw are going to stay on the wagon? The Rebbe wasn't finished. He's keep moving. He says, do you believe? He was like some accusing attorney in court, question after question after question. He says, do you believe that Hashem has decided which pieces of straw blown off the wagon? Oh, Rebbe, you already answered that. No. Which pieces of straw are going to get blown off the wagon and are be trampled in the street, and which pieces will be eaten by a horse passing by, and which piece is going to blow into the pasture and be eaten by some calf out in the pasture? The Rebbe's not let up yet. We're not down to the depth of Emuna. We're not yet down to the depth of divine providence. The Rebbe says, do you believe that Hashem knows that a local pigeon needs to lay her eggs very shortly, but she's got a problem? She has to have a certain amount of comfort in her nest, and she's lacking a few pieces of straw to build that nest, and she can't find them. So in order for her to lay her eggs, Hashem has to provide her, like he provides for everyone else. Hashem has to provide her for the straw. She's got no place she's not the creator, create the straw. Okay. So do you believe that some of these pieces of straw are destined for that pigeon that's waiting to lay her eggs? She needs to finish that nest within a half hour because she's got to lay her eggs within an hour. It won't take her that long to complete the nest. Okay. And are you aware, says the Rebbe to the Chassidim, that Hashem's divine providence determines the exact place where every piece of blown away straw is going to land? On the right side of the street, on the left side of the street, on the sidewalk, in the meadow, in the pasture? And do you believe, he says to them, that all these occurrences are integral, vital, and important parts of creation in its entirety? Two Hasidim looked at each other, and they weren't prepared for this. They weren't prepared. So maybe the Rebbe teach them such new interpretation of a tractate of Zohar, the esoteric meaning of the Torah, or some higher things about upper worlds or secrets of Hashem's name. And he's talking about straw being blown away and pigeons making nest and calves eating things and being trampled and horses and wagons. And they turned to the Rebbe and they said, Rebbe, they said kind of sarcastically, we're not on your level of Emuna, that where we believe that all these little details are part of divine providence. Besides, what difference does it make if a piece of straw blows off the wagon or where it lands? At that point, when the holy Sraf, now you know why I got his name, the burning angel, he heard their response, he roared like a lion. He says, heretics, get out of here. Get out of here immediately. I can't have heretic in my house. You deny that a tiny detail in creation comes from the Almighty, that it's random. Get out of here. He kicked him out of the house right there. Well, the Rebbe they saw the Rebbe known that Rebbe Julius Strelitzky, holy man, never raised his voice at another human being. He wouldn't raise his voice at a Ukrainian peasant. And here these two Torah scholars, he treats them like they're insolent schoolboys, kicks them out of the house. And here, their previous Rebbe, who they had total trust in, who taught them academic, taught them Gemara, taught them Zohar, taught them Kabbalah, and since that here, well, the Rebbe must have known what he was talking about. And now that they're exiled from the Rebbe's house, they're so embarrassed. And they said, if our Rebbe is right, and if Rebbe Uri is right, and we're wrong, then we're novices in Emuna. And they started thinking, wait a second, chances are that we're wrong. They had a little bit of humility, enough humility to know that not to say right away, the Rebbe doesn't know what he's talking about and go. Okay, because if they'd have done that, then they could have become completely gone away from Torah. But they entered the local shtibel, that's the local prayer house, the prayer and learning house, and they sat down on a bench and they both pondered the chastisement that the Rebbe gave them. And they looked down on the ground, they put their heads down on the table, and they cried for about an hour. They sobbed. The Rebbe says we're heretics. The Rebbe says our Emuna is nothing. We thought our Emuna was so strong, and we come here to Strelitzky and find out that we don't even know what it means to believe in Hashem. And they cried, and they cried, and they cried. All of a sudden, it was about 4 in the afternoon. The Hasidim start coming in. It's time for mincha, time for the afternoon prayers. So they got up and they washed their hands and put some water in their eyes, dried their eyes, and they joined the prayer quorum, the minyan. While praying, after crying for an hour and after having a broken heart, and after really becoming humble, you have to understand one thing. The Kotzker Rebbe Menachem Mendel of Kotzk, he says nothing is more whole than a broken heart. It means a broken heart that brings a person to humility. It's not a broken heart. I'm not talking about sadness and not depression. I'm talking about a broken heart. We say, boy, I know nothing. My Emuna is zilch. I don't understand. I'm so far away from Hashem. I don't begin to believe in Hashem. I don't begin to grasp Hashem. There's so much I need to learn. Hashem, you got to have pity on me. And it brings a person to tears. That's the broken heart that Hashem loves. That's the broken heart of humility. There's nothing more beautiful, broken heart of humility. As soon as a person has a broken heart of humility, that person becomes a worthy spiritual vessel for more spiritual growth. When you feel like that, person thinks he knows everything. Okay, it's like a glass is full. Hashem's not going to pour fine wine on the floor. So if you think your glass is full, my cup floweth over, and you know everything, Hashem's not getting, he's not going to give you any more. Okay, fine, you're full. Go with your full cup. What do you think it is? Person thinks I have nothing. He's making Hashem a worthy spiritual vessel. Hashem says, I'll show you you're not a nothing. I'm going to fill up your vessel. You fill up and Hashem's going to fill up your vessel. Okay, so this is what you have to understand. The Sraf, the holy Sraf, Rebbe Uri Strelitzky, he did this on purpose. And sometimes I know the Melitzer Rebbe, my Rebbe, he's done that to me on purpose. When he figured that okay, Laser's got a little bit of, getting a bit of smug, tear me down, break me down, nothing. Nobody ever tore me down. My commanders in the army, my coaches, like the Red Notes, and I love it. Why do you do that? To make me go higher. So I'll be humble, because humility is the greatest divine vessel can be, where arrogance is the opposite. The Almighty says that he and the arrogant individual can't function, can't live in the same universe. So the Almighty's not going anywhere. That means that the arrogant individual, he's thrown himself out of the ballpark. He's not going to be there. So it was time to pray. And the preparation for afternoon prayers, an hour of crying, an hour of soul searching, an hour of learning humility, tasting humility. This made these two Hasidim exquisite vessels for divine light. So while one of them is praying, he gets this insight in the middle of his prayers, a tremendous insight. And he says, wait a second. He says, the Almighty is unlimited. He controls everything. I'm limited. So I'm looking at the Almighty through my own limited eyes. And that this is also the Almighty putting those thoughts in his head, The Almighty puts thoughts in our head, but it's our job to know whether it's coming from our good side or from our evil side. That's it. There's ways to do that. I've a lot of time talk about that, but it's all coming from the Almighty, So the Chassid is thinking, wait, I'm limited. For me, if I'm walking around with a diamond in my pocket, I'm filing my pocket all the time. Oh, is the diamond still there? I've got it in my vest pocket. The diamond's still there because it's a diamond, has great importance to me. And then if I have a gold coin and not a diamond, maybe I'll fondle my pocket, my trousers pocket once every couple of minutes, but not like the diamond where all the time I'm patting my pocket diamond. And then if I have a silver coin instead of a gold coin, well, I might want to know that I've got 3 silver coins in my pocket and I know that they're there, and maybe check them once every 2 hours that they're still there. I'm not going to think about it. And if they're copper coins, I'm not even going to know how many they're in my pocket. They're in there because they're worthless. All right. But the Zohar tells us that the whole world, what we mentioned before with the super galaxies, it's like an onion skin for the Almighty. It's nothing. So for the Almighty, who is infinite and omniscient and omnipotent, he's all powerful, he's all knowledgeable, he's infinite. There's no difference to the Almighty between an atom of sodium and a Milky Way galaxy. It's for Shem the same thing. Just as he decides the molecular weight of a sodium molecule, he's going to decide what the super galaxies, how many zillions of stars are going to be in a super galaxy. So showing that this is what a divine insight is. If this chassid would want to write down everything he had, the divine insight, in the course of 3-4 minutes of his prayers, he'd have to write a 200-page book. Okay, several dozen pages. So he now pondered the Creator, and he realized that our magnificent, omniscient, and infinite Creator is a Father in heaven, and he's one, and he's named one. He's got no partners. And the entire universe, the Creator, is like a piece of straw. So it's like a piece of straw, just as the Almighty determines how long it's going to take the Earth to orbit the sun, and how much long is it going to take the moon to orbit the Earth. The Almighty is going to decide which piece of straw on the wagon to become part of a pigeon's nest, and which piece of straw on the wagon is going to go to the local cow shed and become part of the bedding for the cows. Okay, and it's for the Almighty. It's the same thing. It's no problem. So the prayers were over, and the chassid emerged from his deep thoughts. He felt like he was born brand new. All of a sudden, he was uplifted. This is exactly what Rabbi Uri wanted to, so he would be able to prepare to go to a higher level. So he can now feel with every fiber of his being. He might not be able to explain it like the Rebbe could, but he could feel the concept of Emuna and divine providence in every fiber of his being. And this is what we speak about all the time. When we work on our Emuna so much that we can feel our Emuna and feel it. And oftentimes you've heard from me doing things where bring Emuna, I can feel Emuna in my hands, feel Emuna in my feet. When we work on our Emuna strong enough, we can feel Emuna in every part of our body. And this is what King David says in Psalms, Kol atzmoisai tomarna, Hashem mi kamocha. We say it in the Nishmas prayer in Shabbat in the morning. King David says, Hashem, all my bones yell out, who is like you, Hashem? Because he could feel Emuna in all his bones. And the more, when we do mitzvahs, we do commandments with different parts of the body. In other words, when you use your hand to give charity to a poor person, when you use your hand to take a blind person, you see a person with a cane at the street corner, and you don't trust the drivers, you don't trust everything, and you say, come on, I'm crossing the street, come with me. And you take the hand of the blind person. When you use that hand to do a commandment like that, you know what Hashem gives you? Hashem gives you Emuna in your hands, where you will feel tangibly Emuna in your hands. The same with your feet, the same with your brain, the same with your digestive system. When you realize that every morsel you eat comes from the Almighty, it's not from you, not from my career, not from my salary, and certainly not my boss, it comes from the Almighty. Okay, it just looks, the Almighty hides these things in nature. You can see us in what's seemingly nature. By the way, if you write nature in Hebrew, which is Hateva, it's the numerical value is 86, the same thing as Elohim, the same as Hashem's name, the Lord. Okay, so now the one of Hasidim is talking about the other, his buddy, that they came together to Rabbi Uri, and he says, I had this magnificent insight in Mincha. I don't know, and he starts to tell. And the other one says, I had the same exact insight. And they share notes, and they both had the same exact insight. So what the Rebbe did, with the Rebbe's blessing, the Rebbe's chastisement, it wasn't because he hated him, and the Rebbe kicked them out of the house and humiliated them so that they would become humble, so that they could have this benefit of the Rebbe's teachings. So, because like I said, a truly humble person is a worthy vessel for divine light. So now, toward evening, they returned to the Rebbe's house. And this time, the Rebbe could see, Rebbe didn't have to say a thing. He could see the light on their foreheads. They're already, with their realization, they've invoked more divine light. They didn't open their mouths. Rebbe, we had this dream. Rebbe, we had this insight. Rebbe saw the way they looked. This is the power of Rebbe Uri. This is the power of the great Rebbes. They could see from a person's forehead that divine light. This is also from Kabbalah. People think, palm reading from the holy side, and forehead reading the lines of a forehead. It's all in Kabbalah. It's all in the Zohar. Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai wrote this in Zohar. Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai, that he lived at the time of, right after the destruction of the Second Temple, 2,000 years ago, a little less than 2,000 years ago. This is in Kabbalah. But people use that for dark side. You go to a palm reader. A palm reader doesn't know to differentiate between holy and bright. But the reading was called Chochmata Partsuf, the wisdom of the countenance. The wisdom of the countenance, that's Kabbalah. So the great Rebbes that know the wisdom of the countenance, somebody could come in and the great Rebbes could say, can't keep a secret from them. I saw this in my own eyes when I was in the room with a great Rebbe, no matter who it is. And he saw someone and he started yelling at him. And he says, the Almighty gave you such a fantastic wife. How can you be unfaithful to your wife? The guy broke down and started crying. He didn't say a word. It's the first time that the Rebbe ever personally saw this person. The person came to see this Rebbe. And the Rebbe said that right away. I saw this with my own eyes. I heard this with my own ears. And I saw the guy break down. And afterwards, I spoke to the particular invitation, and he said, how did the Rebbe know that? I said, well, you can't know how the Rebbe knows it, but it's written on your forehead. Okay, the illumination or the lack of it, person on a high spiritual level that knows what's called Chochmata Partsuf, the wisdom of the countenance, you can read this. There's a few people around today who could do it, but this is the great Rebbes of yesteryear. Rabbi Uri Strasker, this was a no-brainer for him. He could see this clearly. Rabbi Noam Elimelech, you could see this clearly. Rabbi Arna Karlin, there is a custom in Karlin, when a Karliner chassid goes to see the Rebbe, he doesn't go to mikveh. Why? But usually most chassidim, they go to the mikveh before they go into the Rebbe. But the Rebbe said they don't go to the mikveh because sometimes if a person does something wrong, then the mikveh purifies it temporarily and makes it blurry. If the guy's got something bad on his forehead, it makes it blurry. So the Rebbe wants to see you the way you really are. Okay, so Chaz goes in really are. This is a Karliner minhag. Okay, so they came to the Chassid right away. Rabbi Uri smiled at him, and Rabbi Uri extended open arms, gave him big hugs, and he said that sees that nothing in creation is hidden from Hashem, and Hashem decides everything. And the Rebbe came, and the Rebbe accepted them to be students. So they both had this identical insight. They both came to see the Rebbe, and they realized that it was the Rebbe's prayers. It's not that they were on such a high level. One of the insights they had, that by virtue of the Rebbe's prayers, when they left, when the Rebbe kicked them out, the Rebbe had prayed to the Hashem, Almighty, please let these Hasidim, they're earnest, they're good, let them know what real Emuna is. Give them a taste of real Emuna. So they returned to the Rebbe's home, and they became devout disciples of the Rebbe. Okay, so this is the wisdom of Baal Shem Tov. And I don't know if this is written in any other book, but this is the type of things we're going to be learning. And to bring this to learning the depth of Emuna. And that's the whole purpose of our lessons, is to learn the depth of the wisdom of the Baal Shem Tov and his students in Emuna, and to enable each one of us on our own level to attain a higher level of Emuna. In other words, each one of us are on different levels of Emuna. But what I want to do is for each person on his own, you're not competing against anyone else, you're competing against yourself. And by you going up in Emuna, this is going to make you happier, make you more confident, and make you less dependent on other people. You're not going to be dependent on compliments of people. You're not going to be weak when the boss says, oh, you're going to be fired. Okay, do what you have to do. You know, it's not the boss. Okay, you're lucky, Mr. Employer, that the Almighty is giving you the money, the extra money, so that you could pay me. And maybe you're getting 10 times my salary. So when I leave, you'll lose whatever allotment has to come to me, because it's going to give it to another employer. This is the confidence you have. Nobody can threaten you. When you have this level of Emuna, and you realize, like we learned in our lessons on Bitachon, on trust in Hashem, it's the same Almighty that's been feeding you for 30, 40, 50, 60 years. It's the same Almighty that's going to feed you tomorrow morning. It's not changed. There's no new government, no new coalition up in heaven. It's the same Almighty. He did, does, and will do everything. That's our first principle of Emuna. Okay, so the Baal Shem Tov, in his unfathomable spiritual awareness, he could see the mission and the necessary soul rectification of each creation. So, not finished yet. Okay, now this is not the Baal Shem Tov, but this is Lazar's imagination applying the Baal Shem Tov. I'm going to take the Baal Shem Tov story, and this is something, a gift that Hashem gave me after I prepared the lesson. Okay, let's continue and follow that piece of straw. Like, continue to follow the piece of straw. And this is going to give you insight into yourself. When you think that Hashem is giving you a rough time, or Hashem is giving you tribulations, one thing I will tell you across the board, and you can take this and a sign check from Laser, and you can take it. Sure, everything Hashem does is for the best. Write that in 3 words. And everything Hashem does in your life is for the very best. It's all from Hashem, and it's all for the very best, because Hashem is your loving Father. So if it's all from Hashem, He's your loving Father, then it's a no-brainer. He's going to do everything for the best. All right. This is a hard fact, spiritual law. Okay. So let's suppose that there's an imaginary discussion between a stalk of straw that fell off the wagon and the Baal Shem Tov himself. Okay. Since the Baal Shem Tov could see the correction of every creation, so the piece of straw now comes back to the Baal Shem Tov, and he says, Rebbe, I've got a complaint. I've got a complaint about divine providence. So the Baal Shem Tov says, well, what do you have a complaint about? He says, well, I got thrown off with this wagon in this hard wind, and I took a long fall, and I got blown on all over the street and into the meadow. And my friends, they would stay nice and comfy up in the straw pile on the wagon, and I got thrown all over the place. Is that fair? Okay. So Stock says, he's got a complaint. He's got a complaint that Hashem's justice is not fair. The straw thinks he's been dealt with unfairly. Beloved brothers, sisters, okay, think of yourselves instead of that blade of straw. Think how many situations in life you think that you've been dealt with unfairly. All right. So the Baal Shem Tov says, you think it's unfair. The Baal Shem Tov says, listen, little blade of straw, there's no equality in creation. Why is there no equality? Because each creation has its own individual soul correction and mission on earth. So what's good for one person is not good for another person. So your creation is to be off, your soul correction is evolved to be off the wagon. Theirs to stay on the wagon. But the stock says, but Rebbe, why me? Why do I get the tribulations? There's another 1,150,453 blades of straw on that wagon. Why do I have to suffer the tribulations? Sound like somebody you know would say that? Why me? Okay. So then you get a bad diagnosis from the doctor. Why me? You go away, you harbor a little bit of grudge against the Shem. So the Baal Shem Tov says, little blade of straw, don't be jealous of your friends on the wagon. You know where they're going to be tomorrow? He says, where they're going to be? He says, that's Vladimir's wagon. Vladimir is a local Ukrainian peasant. And Vladimir has a cow shed. And he took that straw from the field, and they're going to become the floor of the cow shed. So their next home is going to be, do you know what happens on the floor of a cow shed? What do the cows do to the straw on the floor? Okay, the Torah lesson, to say it, but to say it nicely in Oxford English, they are going to become part of a manure pile. Okay, you are free out in the air. And the same blades of straw, the 1,400,153 blades of straw that you're jealous of are going to become part of a manure pile, and you're not. So the straw, think about that. He never thought of that. He never thought of it. He says, so Rebbe, what's my destiny? So the Baal Shem Tov says, a calf is soon going to walk by, and a calf is going to eat you. Calf is going to eat you. He says, eat me. I'd rather be part of the manure pile with my friends. What do you mean I'm going to get eaten by a calf? Baal Shem Tov said, no. You don't want to be part of a manure pile because your soul is suffering. It's trapped in a low order of creation, a piece of straw. Your soul needs a correction. Now, the calf is a higher order of creation, and the energy that you give that calf, you're going to become a part of the calf. And that's going to uplift you. So now you're being uplifted from a vegetative order of creation to an animal order of creation. Okay. So the straw says, wow, Rebbe, but then what happens? So that one of the rich men in town is going to purchase that calf, and he's going to have you slaughtered for Shabbos main course. This is stock says slaughtered. Rebbe, first I get eaten, now I get slaughtered. That's called divine providence. That's a loving Father in heaven. What do you mean? The Baal Shem Tov says, no, we're not finished yet. You have to see the whole puzzle of creation. You know, those two Hasidim that came to learn divine providence, they are now guests in our town this Shabbat. And they're guests at the rich man's home. So the rich man is going to serve them meat that is part of you. They are going to eat that meat. And they, on their high level of Emuna, are going to use this to praise the Almighty and to learn Torah and to go out in the field and talk to Almighty. And you are going to be elevated to the upper portals of heaven. While your friends are down in a manure pile, you are now being elevated in the prayers of two pious individuals. Okay, you're going to go to the heavenly throne. Now, I tell you the story. This story is a figment of Laser's imagination, but it's based on Baal Shem Tov's teachings and based on the Arizal's teachings. And I'm telling you, beloved brothers and sisters, when you think that we're being dealt with unfairly, it's a lack of Emuna because we don't see the whole picture. But if we could see the whole picture, we wouldn't need Emuna. But the purpose of our lessons and learning divine providence is that we'll believe in this process. The Hashem is uplifting us, because if we never came down to the earth, and if we were up there with the angels and by the heavenly throne, we have an advantage over the angels. They can never learn Emuna. They can see, they'll never learn Emuna. The angels do not have Emuna. They have no Emuna. They're never ingested. They don't have trials. They don't have tribulations. They don't have difficulties. They do. They're divine robots. They're divine robots, the angels. Don't be jealous of an angel. Because a human with the soul of an angel and the body of an animal that lifts the animal body to the level of an angel is higher than an angel, tells us the Arizal, tells us the Zohar. And this is the favor that Hashem did each one of us. Yes, it's not easy getting our souls, which is a tiny part of divine light, thrown into this animal body and getting thrown down to this earth, which is the furthest place away from Hashem. But Hashem does this for us so that we can learn Emuna and we can merit our place in the high form of creation. And that's exactly what this is, the greatest gift the loving Father in heaven could give each one of us. And that's the gift we get from him. That's the gift of Emuna, the gift especially of Emuna in divine providence. And B'ezrat Hashem, our lesson is going to take us higher and happier than we ever dreamt. Amen.